with remarks from President Ilan Goldfein, who will give us an overview and a strategic vision of the Green Coalition. Next, we will hear a few keynote speeches with different perspectives on this initiative. And finally, we'll have a panel discussion on the implementation of the work of the coalition and ways in which we can optimize our action plan in this immediate future. President Goldfein, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Susana. It's a pleasure to be here looking at this full room talking about the Green Coalition of the Amazon in this nice Cartagena, in this very nice Financing Common conference. I would like to say hello to our representatives of governments and development banks, our partners, guests, and friends. On behalf of the IDB, I'm delighted to be with you today. This is a coalition of development banks, and I cannot think of a better place to present it to the world than here at FIX. And especially at the first FIX in Latin America. We haven't talked about it. We created the first FIX in Latin America ever. Here in Colombia. Colombia is one of the 8 Amazonian countries. So a Green Coalition for the Amazonia in the first FIX in one of the countries of the Amazon. Let me talk about a few words on today's stakes. The Amazon region is reaching an ecological tipping point and could lose its ability to sustain itself. If it does, the world will lose a critical climate regulator. That's because the Amazon is responsible for 1/4 of all carbon dioxide absorbed by all land on Earth. 70% of South America's GDP depends on water from the Amazon basin. Imagine how further degradation will impact the more than 40 million residents of the Amazon region, many of them already poor. And imagine what that will do to the global economy. But you can think about the inverse. What will be to make Amazon sustainable? Amazon Forever will do. We need to jumpstart that. And we need to protect the world's greatest rainforest. We must engage and support its diverse communities and create a new era of coordinated international action. Let me share how the IDB is taking the lead alongside you, our essential partners. We are doing it first through our Amazonia Forever, Amazonia Siempre, Amazonia Siempre. It's in our holistic umbrella program for sustainable development. And we invite you all to get involved. The program, Amazonia Siempre, Amazon Forever, focuses on 5 areas, because one alone will not be enough. It needs to be a holistic approach. You need to combat deforestation, and you need to strengthen control and security. But that's not enough. You need to offer an alternative to people, the bioeconomy. That's number 2. And you need to take care about people, the region people there. So if you take care about people, you will take care about the Amazon. If you take care about the Amazon, you take care about the people. And you have to recognize that there are cities in the Amazon. And they care about infrastructure and connectivity. And we need to work also in agriculture, on the livelihood of people, agriculture, livestock, forestry. We need to offer alternatives. If you work on control, on infrastructure, on people, on the bioeconomy, on offering agriculture and other livelihood, you can get there. Working on those pillars, you need to work on 2 more things. Cross-cutting. Scale, more finance, and more impact. So we have now a coordination across the Amazon countries. We have the mandate of the governments to coordinate this umbrella program, but we're also going to reach to the rest of the world, because the Amazon countries care about their livelihood, their forest, but it happens that the rest of the world also cares. So let's approach them and work together. During the Amazon Summit in Belém, we were there, the IDB, the BNDES, and public development banks from the region launched within the Amazon Forever program a specific program, the Green Coalition for the Amazon. And that's why we are here. The coalition unites development banks operating in the Amazon region under a common framework, creating a space for coordinated solutions. It has 19 members, including BNDES and 5 other public banks, including Banco Dex and 3 others from Colombia. But there are 19. Just to be honest, I didn't know we had 19 public banks there. Sorry, I don't want to, but my ignorance. But we have all of them, basically, in the coalition. The coalition will do what? It provide credit and technical assistance to inclusive, forest-compatible and productive activities and strengthen sustainable value chains. What else? It will offer financial and technical support to complementary activities such as sustainable infrastructure and connectivity. It will help overcome 2 major challenges: the need for more resources and the need to enhance capacity and implementation of projects. Let me tell you about the progress of the Green Coalition. We had in Belém, where it started, a Belém Declaration that was adopted at the Amazon Summit, where the presidents asked the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, OTCA. They asked it because this is the political arm of the presidents. And they asked us to invite all of you, all development banks in the region to work through the Green Coalition. So they gave us here the mandate to work together for the Amazon. We have since made progress in defining the coalition's governance. The IDB will lead the executive secretariat with BNDES and will co-chair a steering committee within a rotating presidency. We are shaping an action plan focusing on 4 work streams for this coalition: regional integration and collaboration, common frameworks for sustainable investments, financial solution and technical support. You that heard me this morning talking about innovative solutions, this is part of it. 4, resource mobilization for development banks. Those who heard me this morning also talked about the need to be more ambitious and change the scale, enhance and unlock billions into trillions. We want to showcase concrete results for each of these 4 work streams where our goal is to work hard and COP28 this autumn be the next step. I encourage you, coalition members, to work ambitiously toward this goal. And this summit is the right place and the right moment to make progress together. I'm also pleased to announce that we will start and are starting to deliver concrete results. In Ecuador, for example, a coalition member, CONAFIPS, Corporación Nacional de Finanzas Populares y Solidarias, is designing a program with the IDB that will be support about 2,000 bio-businesses in the Ecuadorian Amazon. In Belém, we announced almost $1 billion in financing together with BNDES for the Amazon small and medium enterprises. So you see this is already moving. We have several potential partners here today, and I invite you all to participate. We have our sisters organizations, the World Bank. We have announced this week a partnership with the World Bank, where one of the main of the 3 areas was working with in Amazon. We have also CAF, which we're talking about. So we have cooperations with several of the agencies here. We now invite developed countries, thematic funds, and philanthropic institutions to collaborate with the Green Coalition. We have complementary knowledge, resources, and reach have the potential to overcome barriers to sustainable development and even generate more positive results for the Amazon, but also for the world. So let me conclude here today that I have shared you the urgent stakes for action and this essential coalition that now is taking place. We thank the member banks and encourage a wide range of others to become partners. Just come along. Thank you, and I look forward for your work in the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Golfan. I would like to introduce Javier Diaz Fajardo, President of Bancoldex, to deliver his remarks.
Thank you, Susana. Thank you, Mr. President. Greetings to co-panelists and to everybody in the audience. I also apologize for giving you my back, but I'll do my best. So there's not too much I could add to what President Golfan has already said, and I will keep my remarks brief. So maybe I would just like to share a few ideas, and hopefully that will invite some thoughts from the audience. Plenary session number 2 had a guest, Mr. Hector Abad, who's not a banker. He's a writer, and probably more than a writer, a humanist. And he said at some point, maybe some of you heard him, maybe others didn't, but he said at some point that if he could provide advice to bankers not being a banker, he would say, just let the Amazon be. Just let it be. Time where it has flourished the most is when you have actually let it be. But we know that's not the case. We know we just can't let the Amazon be with the problems that have come along. So to tackle those problems that have come along, I think we need to do a number of things. I think we need to learn from our African colleagues. I think conservation efforts in Africa have a lot to show, and we in Latin America should actually take a very, very deep look at what conservationists and governments have done in Africa. So to me, my first thought would be we have to look towards the African continent. I think we also have to recognize that some of the problems, a good number of the problems, come from illegal activities. We tend to think that because this is a development conversation that we tend to just block from the picture that there's too much illegality. The drug trade, the illegal mining, the illegal logging, agriculture that is unsustainable. There's too much going on around, which, as President Ilan says, needs to be controlled, needs to be supervised, but we do need to put it on the table. There's too much illegality in and around the Amazon. I was fortunate enough a year ago to visit Manaus, and you do realize what some people say, which is there's too much infrastructure that has gone to waste. Bad infrastructure, and I say this with all due respect to Brazilian colleagues, there's bad infrastructure in the Amazon. And we cannot afford to continue building things and spending hundreds of millions of dollars into things that just go to waste. Regarding the Green Coalition, we're a part of it, and of course, big supporters of the Green Coalition. You have to wonder how much is enough for the Amazon, and the answer has to be, it's never going to be enough. We have to put as many resources to work towards conservation of the Amazon as we can. So it's wonderful we're starting with 1 billion, but we have to move into the tens of billions and so forth, because there's too much that actually has to go into the Amazon. Microfinance was also mentioned recently. Microfinance provides capillarity into credits, and I think that we need to take the microfinance efforts and take them directly to the heart of the Amazon and its cities, because the Amazon has the cities, as was mentioned, and we do have to actually make use of this wonderful instrument, which is microfinancing. And then my final thought is there's an actor missing in this whole piece, or that should be more present, which is Venezuela. There's many reasons why we should work more with Venezuela, and I'm actually hoping that the Amazon may provide a good excuse for us to work more closely with our Venezuelan neighbors. So thank you, Susana. Thank you, President Ilan and colleagues. I hope these thoughts invite discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Javier. Now let me introduce Renata Vargas Amaral, Secretary for International Affairs and Development of Brazil's Ministry of Planning and Budget, will also deliver some welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Susana, and good afternoon to everyone. I know we are the last panel before the cocktail, so I'll keep it brief as well. Let me just first congratulate the IDB for bringing the Green Coalition initiative to this summit. I think it's very important that everybody know what's happening in the region, and as President Goldfein just mentioned, to bring more stakeholders together to work together in the Amazon. I would like just to provide some remarks on the domestic homework that we are doing in Brazil, since we might host COP in 2 years. We have a lot of work to do. I met a lot of you in Belém recently, where the coalition was launched, and we welcome very much these initiatives, also because it's very much aligned with what we are doing in Brazil. Last week we delivered 2 important homeworks to the Congress. One was the Pluriannual Plan 2024-2027 of Brazil for the next 4 years, and also the budgetary bill for the annual budgetary bill for 2024. Why am I mentioning that? First, because the pluriannual plan was the most diverse participatory of the history of the country. We traveled the 27 states of the country, so we heard the civil society to build the plan was a lot of work, a very beautiful work, and the pluriannual plan, it provides a framework for green budgeting now in Brazil. And it's also the first time we're going to have a separate green budget next year in 2024 for the country. And I think it's part of everything that we are doing inside of the country is very much connected with the international agenda. And we from the international and economic ministries are doing a lot of work outside of the country to try to bring more people to work with us together in building a better scenario for the Amazon. I also love to hear the writer earlier today saying that we don't need to do anything, just leave it alone. But actually we do. We have a lot of work to do. And one of the some of the pillars of the pluriannual plan that I would like to mention here, and that I think it's very much aligned with the coalition intends to do for the next years, is the conservation, restoration, sustainable use of biomes of the region, the promotion of industrialization of new technology bases, and decarbonization of the economies, capacity building for prevention, risk management, and response to disasters, adaptation to climate change. I think these are all objectives, strategic objectives that apply not only to Brazil, but to all the region. I also would like to mention and echo what President Goldfein mentioned about Amazonia Sempre. It was a beautiful work that we did not only with the 9 states, Amazon states of Brazil, with the governors, but also with the countries. And I do agree with the previous speaker that we need to involve Venezuela more. That's true. It was partially part of the work that we did with Amazonia Siempre, Amazonia Forever. It was invited, and I think we have space to do more together if we intend to build a better environment for the region and especially for COP in 2 years. So just let me, I think I will stop here, but I just would like to reinforce that we are really trying to do our homework inside of our country. I believe we all are in the same spirit of working together, of coordinating, of bringing the banks to complement their work of each other. So in Brazil, we are really trying to be part of it as a partner, as a country that is trying to join the other countries of the region in building better integration and in working together to preserve the Amazon and the biomes of the region, not only the Amazon, but we have a lot of other very special biomes in the region and in the countries of this region. Thank you so much, Susana.
Thank you, Renata. Let me introduce now our last keynote speaker, Natalia Diaz, who's the Director of Capital Markets and Sustainable Finance of BNDES from Brazil, who will deliver her remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Susana. Good afternoon, everyone. So I think a lot has been already said about the Green Coalition, and what I would like to use a few minutes here is just to share a little bit of the background of the initiative, which will help us to understand what are the targets that we are envisioning for the coalition going forward. So I think that the whole idea of this Green Coalition actually was born in March this year when President Mercadante met with President Ilan in Brazil, and both of them recognized the climate emergency that we had ahead of us and the need to, on one hand, scale up and on the other, expedite financing for the region. Both institutions have been super active in the region for quite some time with different initiatives, and I think that we had a very good sense that there is no time left for us to ignore, on one hand, the problem that we have with Amazon, but the opportunity that we have to transform the world with this initiative. So following that very meeting in March, I had the opportunity to join the IDB meeting in Panama. And I heard from all the governors from the different Amazon countries, I think, as I can sum up with three biggest complaints. One is that each country was trying to design their own solutions for, and that we need to actually focus on regional solutions. The second one is that the financing that was available was not only insufficient, but very hard to have access to. So we need to think of more flexible and agile mechanisms to finance the development, the sustainable development in the region. And thirdly, and most important to my view, is that we needed to find economic alternatives for the 28 million people that live in the Amazon. In Portuguese, we say, não é suficiente salvar as árvores da Amazônia, mas a gente precisa salvar as almas da Amazônia. It's not enough to save the trees, but we need to save the people, the Amazon people. And this was the concept that we started to work after that meeting. And the very reason why we are here is just because we have a full hand of people from IDB, from BNDES, and from the 17 banks that joined the coalition that worked together in such a short period of time to make this dream become a reality. So I just would like to give a full hand of applause for all the teams and for the support that they put together. Putting people at the center of the equation is really important. There are studies that show that for 1% reduction in inequality in the cities of Amazon can reduce 4% the deforestation. So that's what we mean by saving the souls. I mean, we need to think about the cities of the Amazon, how we can industrialize the region. It's not only about the forest. The forest, it's super important, and we need to continue to preserve, but we need to think much more broadly about how we can diminish the pressure over the forest. Then I think, for me, the key differentiating factors of this coalition are really twofold. One, and it goes back to the speech that we have this morning about this identity of Latin America. I think it's for the very first time we were able to put together all the Amazon countries to think on our identity, our priorities, and to unite ourselves around a common goal. So this is very important for us as a region. And secondly, I think it is a solution that has been designed in Latin America for the world, which is just a testament that we are not always part of the problem, but we can be part of the solution. And a few thoughts going forward on how we should take this forward. Stopping deforestation is not enough anymore. We need to restore Amazon. As Ilan pointed out, I mean, we are about to reach the tipping point. We have the honor to have Professor Carlos Nobre at the board of BNDES. We also have Isabella Teixeira, and we have been designing and studying a lot with them on what are the key consequences about us not acting in a very urgent manner. And we need, we are planning a key initiative in this regard to be presented in a couple of months that will be really a game changer for the region. And I will stop here because we still, there is a little bit of design still to go on. And then secondly, and to Javier's point about Africa, I think we need, Amazon is just a starting point. We will start that, but we need to think on how we can expand this initiative to include other tropical forests. Because we need to talk about Indonesia, we need to talk about Congo, and I hope that this is just a first step towards a very green and global coalition towards that will actually be potentially the biggest contribution that Latin America can give to the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Before turning to the panel discussion, I would like to thank President Ilan Goldfan, who will unfortunately has to leave us to attend another previously scheduled engagement. Thank you, President. So I think we might reach at the end of this hour our first record as a coalition. I have never seen a panel with 9 panelists right before a cocktail at the end of a packed day such as this one, and I promise we will reach the record to keep you engaged. I will try as much as possible, and I'm sure looking around this table, we're privileged to have such a diverse group of institutions and individuals that have joined us today. But I think this is really emblematic of the coalition's ambition. And so with that, I turn to the panel discussion, and we'll go briefly to around the table and introduce the panelists. Anderson Caputo Silva is the chief of the Connectivity Markets and Finance Division of the IDB. Natalia Diaz, sitting next to him, is the director. Well, she just spoke, so you all had the privilege of hearing Natalia. Javier Diaz, by now everyone in this room knows who he is. Hong Tui Patterson, the CFO and COO of the Green Climate Fund. Isabelle Beltran, the managing director of the LAC division of the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. Svetlana Klimenko, the global lead for sustainable finance and lead climate finance specialist in the LAC region at the World Bank. Alicia Montalvo, climate action and positive biodiversity manager at CAF. Alicia? Yes, hi Alicia. Felix Clauda, here sitting next to me, head of the country team for Latin America at KfW. And Issei Aoki, I hope I pronounced your name well, senior representative of Brazil at JICA. Thank you all for joining us today and for being part of this discussion. So Anderson, I wanted to start with you as a warm-up and as a segue from the keynote speakers. And one of the key differentials of the fourth edition, and it has been present in most of the speaking engagements, is the commitment to action, walking the talk. The president earlier mentioned in his remarks how the Green Coalition action plan is shaping up. And he mentioned 4 axes, right? Enhance members' institutional capacities, help map all of the work that is currently done, finance public and private projects, and lastly, innovate for resource mobilization, drawing on this capillarity and this reach of PDBs. So I wanted to see if you could discuss the process in which these work streams will provide a framework for action and with tangible outputs and products. And what do you see as the key principles that we should focus on in order to obtain success in this implementation plan?
Okay, thank you very much, Susanna. No, it's great to be here. It's great that after exactly 4 weeks, we are back, like since the launch of the coalition, we're back. And there is just like this sense already of belonging, of participation. Like I see here familiar faces that we met in Belém and meeting here again. It's a pleasure to be here. That my objective is to go a level down to tell you exactly how we're working, what the plans are, to give more tangibility of what we're doing. More importantly, is to tell here that the development banks that are part of the coalition are already working and coordinating rapidly to move from the announcement in Belém because that was a requirement from my boss from the beginning. Like, I love the announcement, but much more important is that you deliver, right? So we are really working very fast on that. No? But just as starting from general very quickly, no? First and foremost, we need to emphasize, no, that this is an alliance, no, is an implementation arm for us, in the Amazon Forever program. No? The main objective that we have is really to enhance the effectiveness in addressing the challenges that we all heard here already, that are very daunting, faced by the region for sustainable economic development. No? We talk a lot about financial, technical solutions. Financial resources are vital. Like there is no limit for how much, no, as Javier was mentioning, of financial resources that are needed faced by the Amazon biome. But it's more than only resources. No, it's not only that. It's about integrating higher standards from beginning to end, to measure, monitor, report, no, impact. Now, it's exploring exactly the synergies between the financing that you need, like with very accurate ways of measuring impact, that we are going to really be able to reach much greater scalability, no? Because we know that now for mobilizing resources, showing where the resources are going and showing that it's going to the right places and that you can measure is extremely important, and that will open a lot of doors for the mobilization of capital. Now, this is central for the way that we're starting to work with this mentality that you don't start only with the financing, but it's the financing for what and what is the impact that we achieve, because that's how the funding and the resources will follow. No, so we have agreed that, and was mentioned here on 4 work streams, and then I'm not going to describe the work streams, but tell you how much how they were thought, like the rationale behind them, exactly to reach this scalability. Because the first topic was regional integration, collaboration, through coordinated effort. And why is that? Like, we need, with all these banks involved, we need to map and understand, find the synergies across all the development banks. What is the footprint that we together have? No? So that is very important to map the financial capabilities and where are the gaps. No? And then with that, knowing what the strengths are, we go to the second work stream, which is to develop the common frameworks, because now we know exactly what are the sectors that we're covering, where we're strong, where we need to be stronger. And then by knowing the sectors, we can exactly define that high standards that I just mentioned about in each of these segments, and find then what is number 3 that we say, financial solutions and technical support. So you see how they integrated. You map, then you develop high standards, then you design financial solutions for those types of topics, at the same time that by mapping what are the capacity building that you need, you do technical cooperation and you work in that regard. But with these 3 elements, we come to the 4th, no? Mapping, high standards, financial solutions, technical capacity, and then comes resource mobilization, right? And then with resource mobilization, we talk about here ways of pulling catalytic capital, because we know that will be critical to mobilize catalytic capital that could help with first loss solutions, now grants, ways of doing blended financing, but also then innovating, doing thematic instruments, bonds, loans, etc. No? So this is the rationale for why we're doing those 4 different action plans. The summary of the work then that we have done so far, we have been super, super, super busy. I have to thank all the banks that are here. We have defined very tight deadlines to agree on 2 issues that we are working. One is that I mentioned already the 4 types of areas that we are. So we need to design a comprehensive action plan. No? And then we need, as I mentioned, to understand what are the areas of strength, what they are, the existing footprint. Understand what are the gaps that should be prioritized, and then financial and technical needs to promote. But the second part, very basic but super important, is how are we going to work together? right? So the other part is that we are going to have like a governance structure on how decisions are going to be made, how directions are done, how we are going to leverage on international partners, etc. No? So as I said, today we complete 4 weeks only, since we were there back in Belém launching that. No? It's not much time, but we already feel such a sense of commitment, urgency, cohesion across all the members of the coalition. And as a result, we're making continuous and fast progress. So that you have an idea, we carried so far from there to here 16 very focused, structured discussions with each of the development banks to exactly start mapping the strengths, the gaps, what the vision for the coalition. No? We are exactly on track with what we had agreed in the first working session in Belém, which would be that here at FIX we would meet again, have our second meeting, and that will be on Wednesday, and then to share what we learned in these 4 weeks. No? We are already consolidating all the lessons we learned with this deep dive with each of the banks, and that will form the basis for the action plan that I just mentioned. Again, we are putting ourselves there on the spot, like setting that at COP28, we are going to be there presenting the action plan. We are going to be there presenting the governance mechanisms that we are going to work. No? So this is in a nutshell what we are doing. But I wanted to tell the other thing, like President Ilan already announced, is that we are preparing, organizing ourselves with action plans, etc. But we are working now in already in trying to see deliver demonstration transactions, operations, and then that was already announced in Belém, the operation, the letter of intent of Pro Amazonia of $900 million, the program with BNDES. President Ilan mentioned the program with CONAFIPS on bioeconomy that we also doing, and it's very interesting to also see how the cross-sharing of experiences help, because it is worth noting that we gain experience in bioeconomy field with national financial institutions thanks to a program we did in 2021 with COFIDE. That's another member of the coalition, where we did a 20 million program. We all know that's a new area. There's a lot of learning on from the concept of what bioeconomy is, to the way that we are going to mobilize that and reach. So the other news that I was not told yet, but I'm super proud now that we are an honor that it's going to happen here, is that we are going to announce the 20th member of the coalition. Now it's a very tangible achievement today. We have a new signatory party that will be joining the Green Coalition, which is Finagro from Colombia. So as it is really like, just as President Ilan mentioned, that we didn't know that we were so many. Like, it's such a great pleasure. And then I kind of bring just a few weeks before Belém, like calling some of you and saying, please come to Belém, let's engage on this together. And I was like, I was truly impressed with the level of commitment and how everybody came and then are going into the same direction. So thank you very much. Let me finish here, and I hope to see the development banks on Wednesday in our second work session. Thank you.
So thank you, Anderson, for sharing with us this overview of the coalition and the action plan. I wanted to turn now to the representatives from the national development banks, the public development banks, and members of the Green Coalition, 19 plus right now members, and starting with Natalia, who is a co-founder as well with the IDB, and from BNDES's perspective, what do you see as the main challenges and opportunities in the implementation of the Green Coalition? And in particular, and obviously I'm throwing this at you impromptu, but I was very much struck by your comments in the previous session, the plenary session, in which you described the way in which Brazil can reindustrialize and can do so in the context of a clean energy matrix and of scarce resources and through the productive development of certain sectors. So I was wondering if you could speak to that as well and ways in which the coalition could help further BNDES efforts in that tall challenge for the region.
Yeah. No, thanks, Susanna. I think that also another feature of the coalition is being innovative, right? And this is the whole purpose. I think that we have plenty of instruments that are sort of providing different types of assistance to the region. But when we started designing, we thought about how we could be innovative in the way that we bring financing to the region. And what we use, one of the examples that we have, BNDES was a pioneer in launching blended finance solutions in Brazil. So we did and in the very true sense of blended finance, which is to bring catalytic capital to de-risk a project and bring the private sector in sort of a governance, or to put actors that would not sit in the same table to look into a project that they would not consider if it was not for the fact that all different players were looking into that. And we have one specific case. We did this, we committed 90 billion reais of our own grants to do this, to structure this blended finance solution. And one of the features was circular economy and social and environmental, and there are a few projects in the Amazon that we put together. So I think the coalition was born in the sense that we need to see how we can scale up private financing, also public financing as a means to de-risk certain productive projects in the Amazon to bring in more capital. With that in mind, and I think this is a concept that we would like to apply to Brazil and to Latin America in general, is how we can, because it's much more difficult to attract financing for emerging markets like Latin America. But as I pointed out in the previous panel, we do have competitive advantage that we can turn into comparative advantages. And one of the key is really the clean energy matrix in Brazil. For the ones that don't know, the energy matrix is 45% renewable. The power matrix is 85% renewable. And what we would like to do is to use that advantage to attract investment in the industries that we need to reindustrialize Brazil and actually use Brazil as an export hub of green projects. Everything that is produced in Brazil is greener by nature because of that, even solar panels, whatever. And I think that by doing that, we would fulfill two main objectives. First of all, we would contribute to developing nations that have companies that could invest in emerging economies to comply with their commitments to climate transition. And on the other hand, we will be fulfilling a social objective to create growth where it is mostly needed, which are in emerging markets. So in the Amazon, I think when we think, and one of the key challenges that the coalition has is really to identify which are the sectors that we want to focus and which are the industries that can be built in the region. It's not an easy task, and I think over the past 4 weeks, one of the sub-segments of the work that we have been doing is to try to identify which are the priority segments for the region. We are not only talking with the banks, but I think that we need to do a little bit of ground cross-checking in the sense to come up with really where are the areas where investment can move the dial for the region. I don't have the answer yet to which are the sub-segments, but I think that we need to apply the concept And even if we are talking about producing cocoa or other, we need to have that in mind, that it's not only to produce another product or how we can actually add value, develop some sort of industrialization so that we can generate more GDP per capita for the region. I think that's the concept. We are in the initial stages of mapping this out, but it's definitely one of the objectives that we will pursue with the coalition.
Thanks, Natalia. This is very interesting in the sense of, the challenge of identifying these sectors and industries, and, as another form of mapping in one of the 4 axes of the coalition. And so with that, Javier, I wanted to kind of put you on the spot in terms of Bancoldex and the work that you've done in terms of bioeconomy projects and second floor lending to SMEs, and thinking about that with this productive development and sectoral perspective for the Amazon region. So how do you see the coalition, and what challenges and opportunities do you see through the coalition to be able to jumpstart and accelerate this bioeconomy work in a way that we can reach more scale than we have so in the past?
The short answer is we haven't done enough. And there's a number of reasons for that. One, but maybe not the most important one, is because sometimes we see a lack of demand of credit coming out of certain parts of the region. So we would love to do much more credit in the Amazon department of Colombia. We would love to do much more in Guainía and so forth, but how much demand of credit is there? So that turns us to another focus, which is it's not about credit only. We have to do technical assistance. We have to create capacities that may or may not, in the end, ask for credit. So I think our, to put it differently, I think our focus has been extremely narrow. And not just those of us who are here from Bancoldex, but we go back in time, and we've just thought about things the usual way. If there's no demand for credit, then maybe we just walk away, and that's probably been wrong. So that would be one answer. The other answer is, I probably mentioned earlier, where we have been relatively successful is with microfinance institutions. These are extremely, extremely powerful instruments to actually get to those levels where we typically don't go. And of course, there's other windows opening up. Carbon markets. Carbon markets have a number of virtues, but on the other hand, pricing of those instruments has not been transparent in the past. Or stated differently, it could be much better priced. So we do think that there is something to do there. And I think for the sake of time as well, just wrap it up there, which is, it's never enough, and we haven't done enough. So we have to focus differently. And if there's no demand, maybe we have to create demand. Maybe we have to help small businesses and microfinance institutions create those conditions. So part of the good that comes out of this is we have to refocus, we have to look at different instruments, and again, talk to our neighbors.
Thanks, Javier, for these thoughtful comments. So I want to get one thread of what you said, which is we're too narrow. And I look at Hong and the GCF, and I also am thinking about one of the comments in the earlier plenary that struck me when you were talking about how the GCF was able to leverage local and tacit knowledge, and to do so in a way where you develop common standards. So to what extent is defining the problem together going to be able to get us on the right track, and in the sense of engaging with these structural determinants of growth in the region?
Great, thank you for that, and I have to congratulate this group of people here around the table, and the other, I don't know however many. It's a growing number, but it's probably about 15 or so who are not around the table who are also included in this. initiative. It's something that's very close to the GCF's heart. Our very first project that we did was actually with the Amazon. And so it's something that we feel is a permanent addition and continued support from the GCF. I also want to congratulate this team because what I hear around the table is really an approach, a systemic approach towards how do you save the last major carbon sink. And on top of that, this being, you know, a double tipping point for the Amazon, where with the biome at risk of deforestation, and so now you're looking at a Sahara equivalent issue. On top of it being a net contributor to carbon as opposed to a negative carbon effect. I guess maybe if I answer it a little bit differently, because I don't think that, you know, it's necessarily about setting standards. I think when we talk about, and especially in the Amazon, what we found is one of the projects that we did that was approved in 2021, so right in the middle of COVID. What we found is that the project that we did in Guatemala with the Mayans is that a lot of the improvements and a lot of the programming that really needed to happen actually happened with indigenous knowledge. And in areas such as the Amazon, really a lot of the solutions need to come from that, from indigenous people. And so how can we, you know, leverage that and really create much more holistic thinking around how we're going to really solve this problem, and how can we reduce the issue while also helping support livelihoods. And that's really key. It's not just about deforestation and saving the forests, as Natalia very, very eloquently talked about. It's, you know, it's not just about the trees, but it's the people, and how do you balance that? And this is where the indigenous knowledge does come in. What I talked about in the last plenary is something that we are working towards during COP is thinking about the systemic change and how do we actually really affect systemically and change the tide and the direction of climate action. And so we are looking to, across the 4 funds, the Adaptation Fund, JEF, SIF, as well as GCF, how do we come together and actually demonstrate the coherence and collaboration? As part of that, our Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group said, well, you know, there's the equivalent in each of these, and so how do we actually bring that together? And so we're now moving towards looking at, social standards and gender risks and indigenous peoples risks. We're moving away from thinking of it as mitigating risks, right? And how can we actually incorporate their knowledge, and how do you bring their voice to the table to actually create much better programming, much more innovative programming? And so I think that's the direction that GCF is looking to do. And just one last plug, even though Ilan is not here, I think one of the programs that we did do, just to kind of loop together this innovation, loop together the systemic change, you know, the project that we did with the Amazon Bioeconomy Fund, it really does focus on grant making, as well as concessional lending, as well as equity. And so you can see how that cycle really works. You're looking at technical assistance and capacity building on the grant side. You're looking at concessional lending for small activities, and equity investments to really catalyze that private sector to come in. You know, it's a real indicator that if GCF is thinking, we could actually make money on this, that we've actually put our review and our stamp of approval on this, then how do you bring private sector in? The first thing you do is you put your money where your mouth is through equity investments. So I just wanted to put that plug in.
Thanks, Hong. I think you just outlined a very innovative and groundbreaking approach in terms of how to define these problems and actually walk the talk, and in the full sense of the term of indigenous, which in the English language, as you all know, it's both indigenous but also local. It means local, so it covers all bases. But I do want to go now and hone in a sector, and literally bring energy into the room. So I turn to Isabel so that we could look at how the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. We're longtime partners with IDB and IDB Invest in supporting the energy transition in the region. And I was wondering how, from a sectoral perspective, you see the Green Coalition furthering your mission.
Well, thank you. Again, congratulations to the coalition. To be honest, it's really bold and ambitious, and it's really a great step to show how development banks can and want and can work differently to really achieve transformational change that is sustainable. So I think this is really great. And I think the success is going to be truly be collaborative and synergetic, move beyond cooperation and to really complementarity. So we are excited to support this. We in the Global Energy Alliance are an organization formed by 3 philanthropists, the IKEA, Rockefeller Foundation, and the Bezos Earth Fund. As it was said, we support energy access and energy transition with the IDB. And this is kind of like at the heart of what we want to do. We believe that renewable energy can be the entry point for true economic development, and that there's a need for multi-sectoral projects that look at energy as one of the tools that will generate green, sustainable economic development. And so we're ready to support the coalition to work a little bit differently in terms of focusing in multi-sectoral projects that look at agriculture, at health, at education, at jobs, at micro and small and medium enterprises, at capacity building, and that really bring together beyond the banks, the philanthropy sector that can help provide that catalytic capital. We can provide technical assistance, pilots for innovation and in new structures, and to really define, as Natalia was saying, more flexible projects that really reflect the realities of the region, and putting the community first to really respond to what they need and not to what we think that they need, which I think it's key. And so we truly believe that this entry point through energy can really create growth and better livelihoods, and can be the motor for a new model of sustainable growth. So yes, these communities are at the frontier of the effects of climate change, but it can also be how you showcase to the rest of the world how sustainable, green, climate-friendly growth can happen. And so we're ready to support. We focus exclusively on energy, but I find this to be incredibly inspiring.
Thank you, Isabel. And I think your point about finding what they want and not what we project on the local communities is key. And with that, I wanted to turn to the World Bank. And with your track record of multi-sectoral projects across all regions, what can we draw on this experience and learn for the Green Coalition and further our ambition here?
Thank you very much, Susanna. And I also would like to start by extending congratulations to BNDES and IDB for convening this coalition. I can only imagine what it took to get 20 banks together. So kudos to you. We are part of this coalition. We are very excited to be sort of focused on such a noble cause. There is, I think, no other way to describe it. Last week, the President Ilan and President Ajay, as I'm going to call him now, not President Banga, but President Ajay, they signed the Memorandum of Understanding, which has Amazon at the center of this agreement. And when I was sitting in the audience and I was watching the 2 men on the stage, and they clearly have this very good chemistry, like that, they're friends. They spoke. They didn't read speeches. And then I sort of looked around and I realized that I was sitting with the IDB Amazon team. So we also have this sort of energy floating. So I think that something good is going to come out of all this. So now to your question, what can World Bank bring to this coalition? And let's acknowledge that this coalition has a lot of very capable people who really know their region, they know what they need, they know where they want to get. What the World Bank has, by virtue of our mandate, this is how we are set up in the context of the global financial architecture, we have access. We have access to certain fora, places, people that probably very few organizations have. Well, of course, you know, we should mention that G20 and COP are often seen as these very desirable and interesting places, and they're actually going to be in Brazil. So we will see what is going to happen in the next 2 years. So, but apart from this, I would like to focus on a couple of topics which were mentioned. One is private capital mobilization and broader resource mobilization. And Natalia and BNDES is already doing something really interesting in trying to structure the blended finance vehicles which will fit this particular area, right? Because blended finance would be very different from sector to sector. So we have been working for many years trying to crack this nut of how to mobilize private capital and bring it to the emerging markets. Anderson knows we have history on all this. And this is not an easy task. But what we have seen happening in the last few years is that private sector also started looking at this. And they have their interest, their own interest in figuring out how to make this happen. And they started forming these coalitions. So as we are discussing this, I think that one thing worth trying would be to try to engage with the coalitions of the private sector, investor-led associations. And this is where, for example, we can help. And a couple of associations to mention is Sustainable Markets Initiative, which is going to have sort of its own meetings during the UN Climate Week, Global Investors for Sustainable Development, the Investor Leadership Network, which was set up by Canada during the G7. So maybe we can try to sort of utilize this sort of one entry to a big group of the investors. Another area that was mentioned by a few is this emergence of carbon, forest, biodiversity, ocean credit markets. It's super interesting. It's as if somebody overnight invented the new element for the periodic table of Mendeleev, and now we are creating the market for this new element, right? A lot of expectation, a lot of thoughts, very little clarity. Probably if we were to ask 5 people in this room what they know about this markets, information will be very different. So there are a few big global fora which are now focused on this, and we are also, as the global institution, very engaged on this. So this is something that we would like to bring to this. So we would like sort of work in the region focused on these new credit markets, be very closely linked and drawing on the global process. Finally, I would mention that when it comes to nature-based solutions and nature finance, we are just having this moment when a lot of the world is focused on this. I cannot quite explain why and how it came together, but it is happening. So here somewhere in the room we have the friends from the Forest and Climate Leadership Partners, which is a group of the governments. It's now 27 global governments which are trying to sort of create these so-called forest packages. And we are also engaged with them, and I think it would be great to bring this network, the Green Coalition, into this dialogue, because there is this capillarity that has been mentioned by many. So we bring this global knowledge, and we see this as our probably main contribution in this context. You know your countries, you know your region. We also have this knowledge, but we also have this global knowledge. And this is our primary role, perhaps, to transfer this knowledge. So we really look forward to working together with you. We already are engaged, and hopefully we will be able to demonstrate jointly some success in the short term, because holding together 20 institutions, it takes an effort, right? So we need to see where all this is going. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana. So, in the spirit of coordination and efficiency, I wanted to do a tour de force with the last three speakers, because I think we cover almost the entire globe. We have Latin America with CAF, we have Europe with KfW, and Asia with JICA. So I wanted to give you final remarks in terms of how do you see the coalition furthering your own respective work programs in collaboration with all of those around the table and elsewhere? We'll start with the region, CAF, and move on to the rest of the world.
Thank you very much. I will try to be very brief. First, we really feel very happy of being part of the Green Coalition, and also that this was made in the context of Belém Declaration. I think that both things together have a lot of meaning. But for us, the most important thing is the regional approach. We think that many of us work already in the Amazon, but the most difficult thing is to have this regional approach. CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, we really want to support all the tools that make possible to work with a regional approach to develop early warning systems, data collection, tools that really make possible that we work not in an isolated manner with every country, but to really be able to strengthen the collaboration among the countries. That's why we have been working very much with ODCA, and we consider that ODCA has a very important role to play also in supporting the Green Coalition too, I'm sure. So I just would like to add that there are several things that we consider important, that the Green Coalition should also work on that. First, the role of digital tools, innovation, digitalization of all the elements that will be very important part of this strategy. Also, from a regional point of view, the connectivity of the ecosystems, not only the Amazon, but also the other ecosystems, making possible that the connectivity is not broken. And also I would like to mention that regarding the innovative financing, this question that you have mentioned is very important. We need to work in biodiversity certificates related to the Amazon, but we need really to be able to create demand of these certificates. And to me, this is a real challenge. We need to really make sure that there is an interest coming from the private sector in buying these certificates. And up to now, I don't see that we have been able to really create this interest. The Amazon, people consider very important for the planet, very important for the region, but the most important thing is, as Isabel was mentioning, is the people living there. So we need to really be able to build good certificates that will take into consideration the things that are important for the people. So for us, being part of the coalition is very important, and we consider that we need to really develop the tools that make possible a regional approach, working with the 8 countries, including, of course, Venezuela, as Javier mentioned, and CAF is doing that. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk here, and congratulations again for the leadership of the BNDES and the BIT IDB. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. Felix in KfW.
Thanks very much. I'm afraid I'm the one but last speaker before the cocktail. Yeah, I'm very happy to speak here about opportunities to share work with this great coalition, which consists of so many people and institutions that we have been working with. The green development is sort of at the heart of our DNA, and KfW, 2/3 of what we do worldwide is actually climate or environmental finance. And also our government, and certainly in Latin America, this is the focus of our work. Our government is now subsuming it under the new word, which is just transition. And what it means, basically, we were in front of a transition before us, but this transition needs to be just, and it's what you have framed as saving souls. The Germans call it just transition. It's about people. We cannot preserve nature. We cannot have climate change sort of limited if we don't deal with the people who need to live off the earth. So this is basically, I mean, a very important principle for us. Just a few instruments that we have worked with so many institutions around the table here is on conservation. We have worked with BNGSA on the Amazon Fund, actually. Yeah, we're very well known, I think, in Colombia, on the Visión Amazonía, in Ecuador, on the Sociobosque program. All these programs, the results-based approaches were actually, when results are reached, they disperse grants, and these grants are actually channeled to the communities, the indigenous community, who live with the indigenous knowledge of the earth and can, again, then contribute to preserving nature. So these are, on the conservation front, instruments that we would like to bring to the table and discuss how they can be expanded, or the experiences learned can be shared. When it comes to more the sustainable use side, which is again about people, this is where lending comes into the picture, working with banks. We've worked with Banco do Brasil on a program like this, and microfinance is obviously a very strong instrument here when you have productive projects that you can finance. Bringing private capital in is a challenge, that has been mentioned, and it certainly is. Also from our experience, we have a couple of approaches, the Eco-Business Fund, for example, which finances sustainable agricultural enterprises with co-funding from IDB Invest and the EU. And there it is a fund where we attract private capital in a sort of a co-financing approach on a fund level. That is one way of getting sort of the de-risking a bit operationalized. Another program we have is Floresta Viva with BNDES, where we have a matching fund, so you have some incentive funding for private investors to come in and bring in the other part of the finance to the table. And then obviously there's all the green capital markets and transparency initiatives and investment initiatives we have together with IDB and others. But it is, this is still a long way to go, I think, but I think we're advancing on it. To conclude, what we think is really special about this initiative is gathering all the banks, 20 plus maybe, from the region together. And a lot of the topics we are discussing, I mean, they don't stop at the borders. You've mentioned illegal trading and then other challenges in the region, Javier. And I think this is where you need to have an approach that crosses the borders, and having the different actors from the different countries working with their governments to improve control, to improve institutions, will have a much stronger effect than working bilaterally in each country. And I think that's not an easy task, but it's a really worthwhile one, and I have a great expectation that this Green Coalition can make a difference here, and we're happy to be part of it.
Thanks, Felix. Issei.
Okay, thank you much for this opportunity to speak out in the final speaker before the cocktail. Okay, thank you much, Susanna, for inviting me to join this important session. Already, Felix and other guys are already, concluded the idea for the further coalition with the Green Coalition and the Amazon Fund, etc. So in this final Palestranti, I'd like to explain two topics. JICA is, before the 2008, we are, financial institutions, financed almost many projects with sovereign guarantee. But after 2008, we merged with JICA. JICA is a corporation, technical corporation arm of the Japanese government. So in this sense, I'd like to introduce two ideas and two implementing projects here in Brazil, here in Colombia, excuse me. Yes, and first one is the support of the Brazilian government to make efficient their control activity of illegal logging. As all of us know, the Amazon area, every year, 20,000 square kilometers are cleared by the illegal logging or legal logging. The Brazilian authority, namely IBAMA, they are implementing the fiscalization activity, but of course it is not enough. In this sense, JICA is utilizing the satellite image technology and artificial intelligence This satellite can take a picture through the cloud, even in the rainy season, throughout the year. So that we can detect the change of the land surface throughout the year. Second technology is artificial intelligence. Utilizing the information like proximity to the road and proximity to the cities, we can foresee, we can estimate the future deforestation site. Utilizing this information technology, we are supporting Brazilian institutions to make their fiscalization activity more efficient. Maybe this kind of activity can be spread out or scaled up with your partners and Green Coalition. This is one of the ideas. Second idea is the utilization of Amazon forest in sustainable manner. In this session, and the report of World Resources Institute mentioned the importance of the utilization of the Amazon forest in sustainable manner, because in Amazon area, there are more than 28 million people are living there, and more than 200 groups of indigenous people are living in the Amazon area. So in this sense, we have to utilize the Amazon forest so that they can make a living from the forest. In this sense, historically, the JICA and Japanese government are supporting the activity of agroforestry in the Para state of Brazil. In the past, in 1950 or 1960s, one of the cooperative of in Para state are dependent on the pepper production. As all of us know, the pepper is heavily dependent on the international market. So it is not as sustainable from the viewpoint of financial point of view. But they started to the agroforestry. They will produce the cacao or cupuaçu or acai, the Amazon traditional fruits, so that they can produce, they can produce their revenue and without cutting the trees. JICA is still supporting their activities. A couple of years ago, we supported to construct the processing factory of the fruits produced through the agroforestry, so that they can add the value and they can export these products to the Asian countries and Europe, etc. But cooperatives and private companies, they want to extend their market to other countries. In this sense, we are continue supporting them to secure the traceability of the product and to obtain the international certificate. This kind of the product is produced in sustainable manner. So, not a conclusion, but we are looking for our partners, how we can enhance or expand this kind of activity. Maybe all of us know the agroforestry, the scale is very, very small, but we can expand through the partners, your banks and DFIs, etc. So we would like to have further communication with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See, this was very comprehensive and detailed. And so I have this impossible task of summarizing this hour-and-a-half long conversation ahead of the cocktail, and I ask of you 3 minutes. And here I will attempt to cover what we tried to do here. I think the discussion was all around a smart mobilization, right? In a way that there are 3 guiding principles, let's say, that I can summarize behind this new mobilization through innovative financing. The first, everyone mentioned to some extent the need for scale, right, to close these financing gaps, and we want the whole to be greater than the sum of the parts. Second, for that to occur, we need high-powered incentives, and to be embedded in our instruments. The President Ilan talked about that somewhat. Others mentioned the necessity to move in that direction. Third, we mentioned the defining standards, and Hong spoke a little bit, not as much as defining them, but perhaps elevating or jointly creating them with indigenous communities and local and tacit knowledge. And here, identifying these local needs in a flexible and adaptive manner. Natalia spoke to the need for flexible and demand for flexible projects. And it also reminds me of a comment you made in an earlier session where you talked about the need for the region to position itself to harness more financial flows. 25% are bound to low and middle income countries, only 6% to Latin America. And so this positioning, and now I want to end with the elephant in the room, has much to do with institutional capacity and rule of law. And all of the comments, if not in the beginning, but mostly at the end, touched upon pieces of the elephant. And I think JICA embraced it in terms of the pragmatism and the way in which you described the examples of working with the Brazilian government in that particular context. So I think we have to ask ourselves really, how will this time be different than before? Like, how will the Green Coalition really break a paradigm in terms of institutional capacity and rule of law to unleash everything else and everything that we're talking about? And so, you know, behavior follows standards, but when standards follow behavior. And so if the key question then is, how are we going to change this behavior? And ICRL and how we speak of capacity building and institutional strengthening should be at the forefront of that answer. So bottom line, it seems that we're moving towards a new standard of finance, but we're also moving perhaps jointly towards a new standard for capacity building. Hopefully a standard where we can scale finance, but most importantly, we can scale capacity building, because we want to end in a place where we're saving souls and we're thinking about people and how they live in their communities and responding to their respective needs. So with that, I wanted to thank you at the bottom of my heart, because I was really engaged in this discussion. I thought this was a delightful time to spend the afternoon. But most importantly, I wanted to turn to the audience, which I've given my back for the last hour and a half, and really thank you for staying here. I hope it was not just a cocktail, but you know, thank you for being here with us until the last minute. And we have one last surprise for you, which is to witness the signing of the 20th member to the coalition, Finagro. And with that, I wanted to invite Angela Penagos.
Thank you very much. That's great. Okay. I have my pen.
Notwithstanding our ambition, she has to sign 6 copies. For symbolic purposes, we're signing 1, and this brings us to the end of our day, and I look forward to speaking with all of you, or many of you, at the cocktail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, great. Then I must. Okay.
Parabéns.
Que loucura.
Muy
Que
bueno.
loucura.
Muy bueno.
Você viu isso? You must write the date here? Yes. So today is for yeah. No, but all the teams and especially the operator and the ones that originate the project. That is it. But I want to join as well. So I'll
Eu gostei muito do...
Yes. Eu queria muito. Então, vamos trocar. No, ustedes, qué pena, pero se me cruzaron las reuniones. No, no sé. The Spanish, then Spanish, English, and this one. No, no,
Faltaría portugués.
Ah, here.
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much for KFW, and I was so thrilled today to sign Ana Maria signed a very non-diplomacy and also the two
Exactly. Yeah, no.
an invaluable partnership that we have together. So I hope we can continue. Yes, the future milestones. It's been a pleasure. I worked with your team in DC. We had a deep dive, and it was great.
Yeah, we need to plan a new deep dive, but it's probably going to be. En ese sí hacemos una clase.
Big advocate.
Just moved on now, so now yeah, Frank Cosmet, he's a very experienced person.
Yes. Oh yeah. I haven't met him yet.
No, it's
Spanish.
We can connect. I'm connected. Infamously. So we can keep a copy of it.
It is. So you are doing what in Washington?
So I'm the manager of the Institutions for Development sector.